Good morning and welcome back. I promised you this morning when I did the earlier version of the show that I had my our favorite visitor in studio. Actually, she's not in studio. She is in spirit in studio. If anybody watched last week's special edition, she is back. What was your name? Betty? What?
Betty, Betsy. What are we going with?
What did we call you? I can't remember. We probably should have rehearsed that before we started. It'll come to us before the end of the day who this mystery guest in studio is. Anyway, we're just practicing. I used to be able to take comfort in the fact that I was just doing research and development on this because virtually no one was listening. However, the good news and the scary news is that we have 2 or 3 listeners now. I don't know who they are. I don't know if they are strangers. It's possible my thumbnails have attracted, connected me to other thinkers who are thinking similar thoughts. I have no idea. Or whether it's my friends and family still. In any case, I figure I better step up my game. We better step up our game.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So anyway, the show is Who Am I? And the reference is always source energy. Who am I in reference to source energy? And what do I mean by that? Well, the show poses these questions. Who am I? Where did I come from? What is my biotechnological design and how do I operate it? How does it function? What do my emotions mean? What is my emotional guidance system trying to tell me? And why? How is it configured? What is creating these resonant or discordant frequencies that are causing the different emotions on my emotional scale? How does that work? And then also the other agenda piece, the other piece of the agenda that we are trying to accomplish is to help us collectively understand that we do not need to be on fossil fuels. We are powering our current society on fossil fuels, and that is what is killing the planet. It is not just human beings being alive. It's...
Here.
I think that the planet could probably easily accommodate 15 billion of us if we were in alignment with the rest of the field, if we understood that we were not isolated objects in space that can just do whatever the hell we want with no consequence whatsoever. We are a field phenomenon, and we need to understand that we're actually 2 aspects. Part of us, very importantly, is individual. That is relates to the concept I talk about all the time and never seem to have time to fully illuminate, and that is divine autonomy. Our own piece of the puzzle, our own individuated spin. That is our territory, and if we would get into our own center and man it, then there is nothing that we cannot be, do, or have. On the other hand, hold on one second. All right, sorry about that if you were listening, because I did on the one hand and then I didn't finish on the other hand. Sorry about that. And then I took a very brief break that you didn't take, but I'm going to circle back around. The question is, who am I? The reference is source energy. The reason we ask this question is, number 1, so that we can understand ourselves. I remember what I was talking about now. It was divine autonomy and you manning your own center on the one hand, and on the other hand, we share a spin with the wholeness. We are all in this together. We are cooperating and co-creating magnificently together, and that's the way we're going to get out of all of our issues that we imagine that we have on planet Earth. Now I'm going to introduce my actually, I've already introduced you as I don't remember what your name is.
Yeah, Betsy or Betty or...
I could start this all over again if you want.
No, it's all right. We're good.
Okay, we'll let it be organic then.
It can be quaint.
All right. Organic. We'll call it organic or rustic.
Right. Yes. Very farmhouse.
So the guest that I've got here, she already understands what we're talking about. We're basically talking about things like the law of attraction. We're also trying to pull in the new physics, the very new physics, published as of 2012, if you didn't already know about it, where quantum physics has been mathematically reconciled with cosmological physics. The paper was written by Nassim Haramein and possibly colleagues. I don't know whose name was on the first paper, but it has been reconciled. We're going to talk about that whole world where we share space, where we are a field phenomenon, where we are the quantum field, where anything can happen, where the law of attraction actually rules the universe. That's the field that me and my guest are going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about politics. We're going to be talking about what it is like to be a young person or an old person in this day and age, what it's like to be a human being in the year 2024, what it feels like to be an American in the summer of 2024. Because, you know, that's who we are and where we are, and I think it's interesting. So if you want to get the ball rolling, Betty, or Betsy, or whatever your name was.
Well, I mean, we could start by talking about that documentary that.
Oh, the one that I asked you that we both watched freshly this last week. It was called Dancing with the Devil.
Oh,
Dancing for the Devil. Excuse me, Dancing for the Devil. We could start with that if we can find a place to do it quickly and easily. Otherwise, we start in on a general topic and then try to find the way. I don't know if our listeners have watched this. Very quickly, it's talking about. Well, you want to talk about what it's talking about?
Yeah. So it's basically a couple of well, it starts with two sisters that were, you know, dancers. They ended up being TikTok stars for their dancing, and then they ended up. Well, one of the sisters ended up signing up to what seemed like a management company, but under the surface, it's more of a religious cult and also a labor exploitation sort of regime.
Yeah.
And this estranged these two sisters, and so the general what's the word I'm looking for, thrust of the
thrust.
what they're trying to accomplish in this documentary is to bring light to this estrangement of the two sisters, as well as the, you know, what the cult has ultimately been doing over the years to other victims, to, you know, lend credibility to try to free the sister that is still to this day in said cult. Now, of course, that's the side of the story from that, you know, documentary. Obviously, you know, just for legal purposes, this is all alleged. The cult, or rather the church and management company, refutes that it is a cult, of course. But yes, the documentary is definitely coming from the perspective of the sister who is not in that management company and does believe that her sister is in said cult. So yes. Anyway, and I found this. I am going to just jump into it because it was very interesting to me, and I think that this might help springboard us into some bigger topics. But it's your show, so if you feel the need to divert, then let me know. But
no, actually, I don't mind at all. We're just think in your mind how you're relating it to the bigger topic, and
yes.
you'll be able to organize this just fine. So keep going. I feel like you're going to hit altitude any minute.
Okay, good. So yeah, no, what this actually kind of goes into a thought that I was having earlier, anyways, about, you know, how we are reorganizing how we, you know, communicate and collaborate, and you know, one of the interesting things about this documentary was because obviously the management management company, all the dancers within it, I mean, gosh, I can't imagine that any of them were over 30. I mean, I think a lot of them were the early to mid 20s.
Yeah.
And you can see, it's sort of a very human thread that isn't, just of this day and age, of wanting to collaborate with people and make art and beauty and be the best of whatever your craft is, and that's not exclusive to this generation. Nor is, on the flip side, the exploitation of labor and the trying to organize for for not aligned purposes, so there's on the one hand the people that want to find their dreams and the alignment that is within all human beings, and then on the other hand, I'm doing the one hand and the other hand too, so hopefully I can remember this, but on the other hand there's the juxtaposition of the misalignment of those that are trying.
Actually, that is a perfect way to bring that program into this program. That is a perfect way.
You believed in me, and here I went for it.
Yeah, as you view that whole situation, you can see you're not actually looking at good and bad people. You're looking at aligned and misaligned purpose. And the solution to this traditionally has been, what law do we have to make and then try to enforce to get the vibrations to form that way? Well, that actually, I don't think any longer or in the near future that is not going to be the answer, because the law is going to get away from us. This topic keeps coming back to me over and over again, and I haven't really meant it to. But that idea of the difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament, and the difference between the time of the law and the time of the Spirit. And I think that we have gone through a couple of thousand years where it had to be the time of the law. That was the only way to organize us. But now we are too big to organize that way. You cannot force 8 billion. It's worse than herding cats.
Exactly.
And ultimately, it's not going to work. And so what we have to do is we have to raise our own awareness and the awareness of the rest of the field, in order that each of us individually can plug our own individual selves into our own individual access to Source. And Source is going to organize us. And the reason that Source can organize us is because you are two beings. You are, and here comes my picture. For fans of the show, here's the picture that I need a text person to come and help me do a better one. But here's my picture, which illustrates my source self, which anchors me to the real and the everything and the field. And then my little self over here, my individual self. And the question is, how well am I aligning those two? Yes. And the people that you see who are greedy or bad or destructive or painful or suffering in any way, their problem is misalignment, not anything else. And if we can learn this, then we can all start learning to collaborate and cooperate and use the universe as our magical instrument by which we organize ourselves from within, letting each individual has to call their own path.
Yes.
I'm sorry, at some point all the prisoners come out of jail.
Yes, well, I would agree.
I know that's going to be very controversial, and somebody's going to take.
We will not explain, not on this episode. We said what we said.
I stand by it. No.
No, and what was interesting, from a more mundane, functional level, the thing that I've noticed, especially with how, now this is more about the way that the future of being alive in this day and age is changing and changing us, and we're catching up with it, but there's distortions still. Um, it's interesting to me because you just mentioned that we, the 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 divine autonomy and the we need to be aware, and we need to raise our awareness enough to organize ourselves, etc. It's interesting because I was thinking about that within, and you were going to bring up, or just in
Briefly.
sort of a comical way brought up prison reform, but I believe in that too. But for this documentary, for instance, I was thinking about it with, management in general of people. It's very interesting to me to see, and I've been noticing it as a content creator as well, and the just sheer amount of this, like, it's almost like an old cough that is, just still resonating, but it's not working, but it's coughing through the spiritual airwaves of this, misaligned exploitation through the distorted purpose of managing people versus the more free and confident idea of being able to say what you want to say and be who you want to be without having to have that sort of management or law. And so the thing that was interesting about this documentary was, this manager that ended up being, what I'm just understanding as a cult leader, is promising these doe-eyed but well-meaning and very talented creators the world, all this money, all this fame, and in some ways he was able to deliver that. Well, it's also then stealing all the money back, etc.
Yeah,
That's where the distortion comes in. But in some ways was able to do that. But in other ways, when several of the dancers were able to break from the management company, were able to find their own less distorted dreams on their own without that management.
Yes. You know what? Actually, the story reminded me, because they all kind of have a common sort of thread. But there was a story about. I think it was in the show So You Want to Be a Cult Leader, and it was that dude in Oregon. That was actually quite a big deal for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Can't remember what his name was. Some guru, somebody or other. I don't know what his.
Yeah.
And somebody who's rather famous. They had a city there, and there was thousands of people, and it was a big deal. They gathered homeless people from different parts of the America and shipped them to that county so that they could get the voters to change the rules.
Yes.
So that anyway, it was kind of quite a. But whenever you look at these situations, it's sort of a mixed bag. And we tend to throw the baby out with the bathwater when we look at the mixed bag. So I think what you're saying is when you look at this situation, actually there was a tremendous amount of this that is just so wonderful, and you can see why it worked and why it was so amazing and why it made so much money, and how it was satisfying or potentially satisfying for all of the creators. They were having a good time. They felt like they were, and instead of looking at the whole situation and going, well, that whole thing must be wrong, you can see where the problem is and where the problem isn't.
Yes, exactly.
And you don't have to throw.
Trying to manage each other versus how they're trying to, and I do think it has to do with their both alignment with themselves and with others. But there's this belief, like I feel like there's a lot of people that have. On the dancer side, they don't have the belief that, they are going to be able to manage themselves. And then on the manager side, they don't believe that they have enough worth on their own without the exploitation of a large stable of people. And both of those distortions in their alignment of thinking about their own divine autonomy and what they are bringing to this, why they're allowed to exist, who the hell they really are, is why then a lot of times these things collide into these distorted communions, frankly, because and I see it in myself all the time too, where I get into these despairing places where I'm like, oh gosh, I couldn't possibly, nobody, I'm just coughing into dead air on the internet, whatever, and nobody's gonna listen to me. And so then I've had agents, I've had managers. Now they were not cult leaders, but they were largely useless. So at least they weren't exploiting me, but they were largely useless. And then it makes me feel discouraged. And then I start to, and what I'm saying is that I realize it's the point of how and why you're getting into these collaborations, the alignment in which you are in, that matters.
What was your intention to begin
more
with?
than it does if they can make you money or if you're largely very talented.
There's another issue I see in a big way, because we live in a paradigm of such lack and scarcity and such fear amongst all of us, because we know there isn't enough to go around. So you want to make sure you're one of the lucky ones that gets some.
Yes.
And so you don't just feel like you can just breathe and eat and be happy and dance, or just trusting that tomorrow will be fine. Everybody feels like they have to stockpile a dragon's portion in order to keep themselves safe from, you've got to live in a gated community, or a private island, or you got to have your whatever. If we lived in a kinder, more synergistic, harmonious, abundant space to begin with, all of us could just naturally relax and just be ourselves and contribute to the, what I'm talking
without
about.
Also having to then devolve into, and this is where the cult aspect of it is interesting, because you'll see, cults where well-meaning people, get together thinking at first that they are, just all coming together and farming together and, helping each other make clothes and having a community of like-minded people. And then
that's what the Oregon people were like. They were all back to nature, and that felt so good. The collaboration of the art and stuff was what felt good to these young people. But
you're right. It is still that scarcity thing, that whether the cultee realizes that the cult leader is the one that is stockpiling people, labor, etc., because they don't feel like they have enough.
And I noticed something else too, and this is where the who am I, the answers that we're going to explore over the days and weeks to come in this show, how this can help, is I noticed that most of the people who were sucked into the cult that you and I watched this past week, with the Dancing for the Devil show, the guy was hooking everybody in by making them believe that they were going to hell. And I'm here right now to tell you that ain't no such a truth. If you understood how blessed, how beneficent, how wondrous and amazing, and the potential and the glory and the joy and the fun and the collaboration and the cooperative creativity that awaits us down the road when we get our heads out of our ass and realize who we are, you would quit worrying about going to hell forever, and people like this could not control you.
Yes.
That
is the hell. That's the only hell.
That is, you're already in hell. You are already in hell. Let me help you come out of it.
Yes, absolutely. And that's true. And therein lies another, adjacent at least to a scarcity consciousness of feeling like,
there isn't enough love. There isn't enough peace. There isn't enough salvation.
Yes, exactly. And that... Precisely, and these are all points of alignment that are distorted, and you're right. That's where the cultee has their scarcity, is thinking that there isn't enough salvation or peace or love, and the cult leader's point of scarcity is that there isn't enough money, resources, labor to exploit, etc. And so, and then when these dancers or any of the cult members of cults that I've watched documentaries on, when they break free of it, But in this particular documentary, it was I loved that they focused a lot on what each of the dancers that broke out of it were doing and how much more abundant their lives were when they took not only their power back, but believed not just that they were going to be millionaires with tons and tons of followers on TikTok, but, the one, I think her name was Kylie, who just decided to, teach at schools and stuff. And now she is probably quite successful and famous and makes plenty of money and stuff, but that wasn't her point of alignment. Her point of alignment was, I need to get back to what I loved about dancing. And every single one of them was saying that. What did I love about dancing? It wasn't the money, it wasn't the fame.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden they became successful because of it.
And that's the answer. That's the answer for us all, to focus on what you love. Quit focusing on the darkness around you.
Yes.
I mean, you can take quick note of it, because it's kind of like the road you're driving on right this very second. It's the raw material at hand, so you kind of glance at it so that you're somewhat in touch with reality. But the idea here is to keep focused on where you're going, what you want, what you love, how it all fits together, faith that it's going to be all right, understanding that the universe is a magnificent, beneficent, omniscient. Actually, I might start adding a link to The Secret in my list of links. I haven't quite finished watching it. I thought I had watched The Secret, but it turned out I had watched something completely different. The movie The Secret, about the law of attraction, really is not bad. It's pretty good, actually. It's not the whole thing. Nothing's the whole thing except the whole thing.
Right, yeah.
But the whole thing is everywhere.
That's profound.
So, I know, you may quote me on that one.
No, I exactly, focusing on what you love. That's and yes, taking note of the raw materials. I had a thought about that because, as I was mentioning, speaking of, just one more note about this, because people are going to take whatever they're going to take out of that documentary, because, they're allowed to, and, whatever chord it strikes in whatever perspective they're in. But for me, there's this other aspect that people, might raise an eyebrow about, especially since and this is going to kind of dovetail into some politics too, we're right in the middle of the possibility of TikTok being banned if it's not sold off, and what is the meaning of all this, is it evil or is it benevolent, the social media and how we use it, and for me, I kind of started talking about this earlier about, I believe that it is both. It's both. It can be evil and it can be amazing.
It's all
focusing on what it is that you love or can utilize out of it is. If you focus on it's just a bunch of hate mongering racists and Chinese government officials trying to steal our identity to take over the world or whatever the hell it is that you want to think it all is. Sure, you could probably find that aspect of it. Or is it another way in which, in some ways we have been more divided and more isolated from each other than ever, and this is one of the last ways, not just last ways, it's one of the ways that we are pivoting as humans to continue to connect with each other. And depending on how you're looking at these things is going to dictate what corner of this crazy new layer of reality that we call the internet you're going to find.
Absolutely. It is the nervous system of humanity with a capital H.
Yes.
And it is just developing. It's not fully it's like, think of it as embryonic at this point, practically. You know? But you're right. The good and the evil is not inherent in the field. The good or the evil or what it's all in the intention of the beholder. Depending on what I liked it too. It just came to me a minute. It's all in the intention of the beholder, whether or not AI is good or bad, or whether or not vaccines are good or bad, or whether or not anything is good or bad. It's
Yes.
all in the intention of the beholder. And so it's all about us shifting our intention. As a matter of fact, I want to go back and readdress, just in case somebody actually does listen to this whole thing. And at the beginning, they get a little bit concerned about me saying that I want all the prisoners to be released. They don't have to be released this moment.
You made it this far, yes. You finally get some relief.
Let me just go back in and qualify that a little bit. That's not the first step. The first step is we've got to get kinder about it. We've got to quit thinking that we can punish our fellow man into better behavior or force him into activities. We should not be allowed to force each other to do anything. And even if I agree that, say for instance, vaccination is the way to go, if I agree that vaccination is the way to go, I still have to say that it is not allowed to force anyone to get a vaccination. If it is the way to go, you've got to convince me. And if it's really, really, really the way to go, you can convince me, because it will be the truth and your intentions will be pure. And I'll pick up on that and I'll go get your damn vaccine. But unless that happens, if you try to force me to get a vaccine because you say it's what we all have to do for all of our good, that's not allowed, because we have divine autonomy and every one of us needs to be free to walk our path. And right now there's going to be a transition because there's a lot of people that are still acting up. And some of them still need to be gently, kindly, lovingly restrained for their safety and ours. Go look at the way they handle prisons in Scandinavia, for crying out loud. We don't need to change a single action first. Let's just soften our hearts first, people, and start opening our eyes and raising our consciousnesses. And then see what impulses come from there. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stop.
No, I love it. And, I was just going to interject that, and I don't want to hear from anybody that says, well, there's been, because there have been some, like, follow-up documentaries about, Scandinavian prisons, and there's been, when they release people, there have been, people that reoffend, etc. I'm like, have we done, can you please qualify that with how much more reoffense is happening in, say, the U.S.?
Exactly. They've got 5% recidivism in Scandinavia, or whatever. I just made that number up.
Exactly. So I don't care. Yeah. I mean, I do care. Obviously, bless the poor victims that have to go through some of this stuff. But what I'm saying is that clearly, if we're just looking at statistics, y'all, and you just want to cherry pick one or two situations that have happened in Scandinavia, that it doesn't prove that their system is wronger than what our system out here in the U.S. is, because Christ.
Yeah, they're much better than we are, and frankly, we're not done either. We can always do it better. They, as far as I know, don't fully, completely, as a society, 100% understand who they are either. I understand they are still using fossil fuels, although they are getting off of certain things, but are they on source energy yet? Has their patent office stopped? I don't know, because the North Sea has quite a great deal of fossil fuels going on there, and I'm sure that there are still moguls in this. It doesn't matter. I don't want to get lost in the weeds.
Exactly. And I just wanted to put that little nugget there in case anybody wanted to say that being kind to prisoners doesn't work.
It absolutely works. Much better than God. What we do to ours here. It is. I have to say how ludicrous that is. The old. And the beatings will continue until morale improves.
And you don't even have to have pity for people. I don't have to feel bad for the person that has committed mass murders to know that it works better for us as a society, as humans with a capital H, when we are less punitive. It's not because I'm over here with a bleeding heart thinking that person that killed a bunch of children needs to get a cookie and a hug. Yeah. Even if it's not because I am siding with them. It is because I want society and humans with a capital H to be softer as a whole.
Yes, absolutely. Sometimes, you feel like a red hot poker up the, whatever would do some of them good, but it just doesn't work, people, because
this has always been my, less dramatic, but just more of on a personal level, why I, even with some of the biggest boobs and butt cheeks of my dating past, why I have not gone scorched earth. And it is not because I don't think that they aren't butt cheeks.
Yeah.
It's because my life has been more peaceful, and my transition into the next stages of my life is so much more harmonious and happy when I don't go on some war path against some dude that I used to date.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it has nothing to do with them not being butt cheeks.
Yeah. Well, I think you remember where you were in a loving way when you were with them. You remember the love, and you recognize the parts that weren't love. You can see it as their misalignment now. You can understand how your own system works and how their system works, and that they didn't know who they really were either, and you didn't know. I mean, it's all a question of alignment. Abraham talks about, if you saw somebody bleeding on the street, you would help them. But when you see somebody being ornery and negative, you tend to want to just get ornery and, punish them. Or you see somebody acting up, somebody desperate and afraid or acting horribly, you don't want to help them. You want to punish them. But they need help. They don't need punishment. And alignment is contagious, and misalignment also is. And so we need to promote our alignment, their alignment. Everybody's good. Even the really, really bad, horrible, evil ones are good. That actually needs a whole lot of words to explain that sentence, but I don't know whether I really want to go all the way. I would do it if I was here by myself. I would go into a tirade about, how even, well, it does relate to this picture that is still on the board, this slide that we're still looking at. It's all about alignment or not alignment. Humanity is one thing, and you have to own all the members of it, whether you like them or not. Trump is part of me too.
Yes.
And he is here showing us something for a reason. He is reflecting something in ourselves back to us, and he's doing it hugely and absurdly and loudly, and we need to hear what everything is telling us.
Absolutely. And exactly. And it is a slippery slope if you start rejecting aspects of the whole. At first, it's like, okay, sure, that seems reasonable. That whatever.
Let's just eliminate those people, and then it'll be all right. Does that sound familiar?
Slippery slope is, well, first of all, okay, already saying something like that is scary. But then the slippery slope is, for instance, there are aspects of our society that believe that, say, like, drag queens are pedophiles. And,
my God.
You know what I mean? And so you might be like, it's very noble to say that we should just eradicate pedophiles, because who likes pedophiles? But then when you start to realize that you can distort that into, what is your interpretation? Is a drag queen a
That's right.
It's a slippery slope until you start eliminating. And so there's got to be another way to look at that in a more holistic and healing way. That doesn't mean that you're embracing pedophiles, but it also doesn't mean that you're starting to distort who you're eliminating from society.
Yeah. Well, like I say continuously, and it's so important. Your neighbor is your unknown self made visible. It's a reflection of you that the universe is trying to show you. And we really can't, we can fix everything that we consider problems in this world if we start from the standpoint of having a clearer, better understanding truly of who we are and how our equipment works. No longer should we should never directly believe the machinations of our negative mind. it's telling us one thing, but it's not a direct relationship between. It's telling us something true, but it's not directly telling us something true, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say that to people. But I think that this dual nature of us, to really understand it, to own it, as though, like, this should be taught in school. This should be generally taught in school, what this still small voice is inside of you, and how the universe is constructed, and how you can be a responsible, source-empowered member of it, harmoniously co-creating and dancing with the rest of the field. That should be taught in school.
Yes.
But instead, what happens is we are all taught this really weird, quilted mishmash of superstitious, partial truths and outright nonsense, and then taught socially to keep it secret because it's a private thing that we start fighting about if we discuss it publicly. And so we have things like, I think that's what causes the kind of delusions that creates the situation where that show was, Dancing for the Devil. I think that is all caused from religious delusions by people who, there's this thing called universal consciousness, and the mathematics implies it. As a matter of fact, the mathematics that I'm always trying to share on this show, it shows universal consciousness right out of these equations. And people who believe superstitious nonsense about hell and heaven and weird ideas that they've come up with from their, traumatized parents, or, however they got their ideas about cosmology, when they stumble into this room of non-resistance, this place of universal consciousness, this place where Abraham taps into all the time, and it's whatever, when they stumble into it, they imagine that first of all, they think they're the only ones there, and then they imagine that must mean that they are anointed by God. And then they start believing these things really consistently, and then the law of attraction it'll support you in anything.
Yes.
So it starts reflecting back to them, the idea that they're on the right track. Oh, I really must be, the next coming of Jesus Christ, and I am the anointed one, or whatever. We need to get away from this educating the people, the general public, in a non-emotional, just, clinical, detached, hey, this is how you're designed kind of way, would stop that. People wouldn't follow them anymore thinking, well, I can feel he knows he's Christ, so he must be. It would stop the follower from doing that. It would stop the leader from being deluded about what he's stumbling across. We'd be sharing all of this huge information with each other. Everything I'd already know, and we'd be working on all of our problems joyfully and co-creatively. What the hell are we doing now?
Yes, exactly. And knowing that nobody is either a worm or a king. That delusion of thinking that, well, as a follower, well, I believe that he believes that he's the second coming of Christ, and I know that I'm not, so he must be. And this weird, and you're right, this like not knowing what kind of divine equipment we all possess, so which makes us both incredibly powerful and special without being more special than the other person, so we can't be exploiting each other, but we could be working together in these divine and powerful ways.
Oh, there is nothing that we could not do if our intention was aligned correctly, aligned with who we really are, aligned with our collective nature as the field, aligned with the 7 needs that we all need to continue this physical experience that we're doing. If it was all aligned with all of that, we could find our sustainable way. That's really what we're looking for.
100%. And then some. Things that we
And
haven't even
then
begun to
some.
imagine that we can experience are out there.
Absolutely. The stars. We don't have to survive by rejecting all of our technology and going back to the plow. As a matter of fact, it's never going to happen. That will never, ever work. So we can go on. We can be a society of concentrated energy and whatever.
Thank you. That is something actually beautifully put. I get a oogie feeling when people come at me. Not that, listen, there's plenty that needs to be improved upon, how we deal with our technology and what, we're doing with our food and with our energy and all the things we've already talked about. It's not that we aren't poisoning the planet and ourselves and all that. It's not untrue, but you're right. Going backwards and, rejecting modernity or whatever, when people get really feisty about that kind of stuff, it puts me off because, well, first of all, was it so great before? No. And secondly,
go watch a show like Poldark and tell me how great it was in the 17th century, 18th century.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. And they weren't in alignment either, and that was really what the problem was. So us poisoning our planet isn't because of our technology, and the age of Poldark wasn't bad because of their lack of technology. The problem is the alignment.
Yes.
So you're right. We can't put the technological genie back in the bottle, though. And in many ways, just because it wasn't necessarily because their technology as to why it was so terrible back then, I do prefer having things like indoor plumbing and such.
Yeah.
So I do like our technology, so I wouldn't really want to put it back in the bottle anyway.
No. Things are actually getting better. The arc is bending. It may be long, but it bends towards justice. That's what Martin Luther King said, I think. And Tom Hanks said something very much like that when he talked about, basically Project America. That it was designed, the project is to build a more perfect union. Are we there yet? No. Have we come? We're still in progress. I think that the exercise last century in World War II's and World War I, that was a big dose of what we don't want any more of, and I think that's why we haven't really had it all full out since. Because I don't remember why I started this. There was a really profound thing, and now I'm kind of end up in an empty space. Hold on, I'm gonna. Oh no, I didn't.
Okay, good.
Here I'm back. Yeah. So the project of our creating a perfect union is a long-term project, and there may be issues in the short term, but the long term, it is unfolding. It is expanding. It is getting better. It is getting more. Just don't look at what's going on in the news for your confirmation of that truth.
Yes, absolutely.
But it really is getting better. The fact that we even fuss about certain things that we used to just take. Now that we fuss about them, it seems like it's bigger than ever. Like, oh, it never has been. No, we just started fussing about it, and actually that's a good thing. Fussing about, for instance, we used to, human beings in Western society used to tease bears unmercifully for entertainment.
Yeah.
We don't do that anymore, and that's a very good thing that we don't do that anymore. Now, you could argue with me, you could point to some place, some isolated place in somewhere that's not up to speed that still does that, but it used to be a general thing that everybody did.
Yeah, mainstream
did that. Mainstream used to do all kinds of terrible things that now are absolutely unthinkable and unheard of, and it is getting softer and kinder and bigger and better. It's just, it all depends on what you're focusing on as to whether you see it personally, because you can easily focus on all kind of bad things, and then all you see is a big, bad, scary world.
Still clinging on, for instance, I do believe that we are becoming a more inclusive society where, identity from, gender and beyond is becoming more, fluid and able to be embraced. And yet, in some ways, there are corners of the world that are louder than ever about certain things. But
Yeah.
it is no longer the mainstream that just quietly accepts that we all must,
Yeah.
suffer in silence.
Yeah.
And so you can, that's what, and this goes back to your, talking about, like, you can confirmation bias your way into, and this actually is such an interesting, exercise in law of attraction as well, which is you can confirmation bias your way into believing practically anything.
Yeah.
And in some ways, it's easier than ever. And I find that to be both a good and a, frightening thing. That because of the internet and because of our access to, all the echo chambers that everybody is terrified of or whatever, in some ways that's, both a terrifying thing. But to me, I'm like, but actually that is just giving us more of a
clear view of the nature of the universe. It's actually what
we're doing here.
Yes. It's what Paul Levy is talking about when he talks about the cure for what ails us lies in the nature of what ails us. He actually says it in terms of quantum physics. He thinks that in quantum physics, when you understand quantum physics, it contains within it a cure for the Wetiko virus. The Wetiko virus itself has contained within it its own cure. When you start looking at this picture as it gets more and more exaggerated, your own consciousness is equipped to understand what you're looking at, and you'll start getting it, which is what I'm doing. It's what I think you're doing, my guest, and it's what I think a lot of people out there in the potential audience are getting to, which is why they might resonate with a program like this.
Yep, absolutely. Isn't that interesting?
Isn't that interesting?
I find it fascinating that in some ways we have such instantaneous perspective on, what you were saying earlier about, it's actually quite easy, or contagious rather, the whatever point of attraction and alignment that you're in, and now more than ever you can go down, and I mean that's practically what the algorithm is.
Yes.
The algorithm is what you are focusing on. And when you're focusing on doom and gloom and, whatever, then the algorithm is going to dish you up more confirmation of that doom and gloom. And the more that you are, focused on spiritual pursuits, the more you're going to be dished up the spiritual thinkers. And the more that you're, my algorithm is all just Shiba Inus, because all I do is look at cute dogs all day, and et cetera, et cetera. It's what you're focusing on. And isn't that interesting how much of a
reflection of reality that is?
Reflection of reality that is.
Yeah. It absolutely is. It's actually startling when you realize. Now, a lot of people get a little grumpy when you try to introduce this thought that there isn't the inherent meaning to the field that you think there is. That it's kind of, you're bringing all the meaning to the table with the pattern of thoughts that you're thinking. Now, you think that there is a bigger meaning, and actually there is, but that's complicated.
You are creating that in how you are both perceiving, interacting, and pursuing it.
A Course in Miracles tells us that every single shadow and nuance of meaning that you're giving to the experience of the world around, you're the one coloring the field. It's not doing it by itself. You're the one doing it.
Yes. Well, and this is why, and whether you believe it or not, why I think you do, but whether one believes it or not, why there are those people that, and people can be like, it's actually this, thing or whatever, but I genuinely believe that there are people out there who have spontaneously, healed their illnesses and have been able to walk on fiery coals and have been able to, chug, Giardia laced water without, any effects, and any number of these things based on what their perception of that is, and why some people might get, sicker from something than other people because at the end of the day, it's how I'm. So, for instance, when I used to be very, 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 very fixated on my diet. When I, dare I say, had, disordered eating about it, frankly. It may be not in the way that most people think of eating disorders, but I was very disordered in my thoughts about it.
Yeah.
And everything genuinely gave me a reaction. I genuinely was feeling ill every time I ate a slice of bread. I was genuinely feeling terrible every time. And what healed me from these things was not cutting every last thing out of my diet. In fact, it got worse and worse and worse, almost like an abusive lover. You couldn't get perfect enough for them to stop beating you.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get small enough for it to stop hurting.
Because it wasn't the food, it was your attitude about it. And so since your attitude didn't change, the food kept poisoning you.
And more of it did keep poisoning me. And then when I finally stopped fixating on the poisonous nature of things. Now, there are still things that I might be a little more sensitive to, and et cetera, et cetera. And I don't disbelieve that people have their sensitivities, but I mean, I was genuinely withering away and getting more and more isolated because of how I felt that everything was poisoning me. And you can confirmation bias your way into thinking, the chemicals are leaching into our soils, and there is all this stuff, and I am being poisoned, and the pharmaceutical companies are out to get us. And all those things may or may not be true to, large or small extents, and yet your focus on them is only going to make you more vulnerable to that course of reality. Whereas if you stop fixating on just the doom and gloom and figure out, the maybe it's even a narrow path, but if you start focusing on the narrow path through in a more peaceful, healthful sort of a way, it's there too.
Yeah. The universe is actually so compliant, it will support you whatever you do. The only thing is so it's been supporting us in our wars. It's been supporting us in our foolishness. It's been supporting us. It's been reflecting back that all kinds of weird things are true because it will do that. But if we understand how it truly comes into being, that's where the mathematics comes in. That's why I always bring up the physics and the mathematics of the cosmology meets quantum physics that Nassim Haramein has done, because I believe that is going to get us the technology that we're really looking for. We got two things we're looking for. First thing is we got to get off fossil fuels, but we could start doing that incrementally. We don't have to go directly to the, I'm going to do a little bit of the show here. We don't have to go directly to the solid state plug directly into source energy devices right away. We can start chipping away at the at our use of fossil fuels by let's call for a national contest, and it's like, see how many people can come up with the best ideas, and we'll crown something, the top whatever ones, the best ideas, and all of the rest of them get honorable mentions, and the whole thing is a joyous exercise in us incrementally getting off fossil fuels, while our scientists work with the real math to get us onto those solid state plug directly into source energy stuff, so that then we can use all of our technology that we already have to desalinate the ocean water, all of the ocean water we need. I was imagining, do you know how long of a stretch there is along the coast of Chile that is all sun and no rain? It's right on the coast. And it dry freaking desert, whatever. If you could desalinate as much ocean water as you wanted to, you could put plants up and down the coast of Chile and just bloom the whole freaking desert. Or you could, as an individual, you could have your little device and your little desalinator, and you could go homestead on what was previously land that you couldn't really live on because there's no water whatsoever. And how do you desalinate the ocean water if you have to have fossil fuels? You have to have the infrastructure, you have to have the motors, and you have to get the gas to you, and now you don't have to do that. Just go plug your device into source energy and start desalinating your ocean water, and we can go forth into the world everywhere and start reblooming the damn place. Instead of killing it off, let's bloom it. We can do it. We
Yeah.
can do it tomorrow. We just got to get off of fossil fuels and get on to source energy. That's all.
That's all. Really, not a tall order. I mean, actually, in some ways, it isn't.
It isn't. And my job for the rest of my life, I'm focusing on what I want. I am no longer going to focus on what we have that I don't like. I've actually been looking at what we have that I don't like for 60 years, and I don't want to look there anymore. I got it, and I'm kind of keeping an eye on the bigger things going on from a historical perspective, but I don't need to watch every day who said what about whom. You know,
it's boring by now.
the Trump coup has been a very slow moving one for the last, 8 years or whatever.
Yeah.
4 years, 12 years, a lifetime.
A lifetime, yeah. I mean, it depends on where you start that, timeline.
Anyway, no, I'm going to focus on what I want, because I'll tell you what I want. I love to travel. And you used to love to travel. I'm sure you do love to travel, even though you haven't so much you're going to.
I am.
I know theoretically you love to travel. And I love to travel theoretically too. Now, some of the things that make me a little nervous is, an unsettled world, with paranoid borders and places marginally at war.
What the hell, guys? Come on, get it together.
But people, we love to travel around the world and visit each other and get to know who you are. And I tell you who I am. And we eat each other's food and we share each other's, whatever. We love to do that. And whatever energy source we find in our future, I think that is still a big part of what human beings are going to do. It's going to be a big part of the circulation of humanity. And there's still going to be a supply chain of humanity. As a matter of fact, it's going to get so much more abundant, because that whole coast of Chile could be lined with farmers and gardeners and individual agriculturalists who have gone in and done their own little thing, because they have unlimited clean free energy to run their plows and their anything and everything, every idea that everybody has, they can go. Now, some people, if they're focused on darkness, they're like, oh, we don't want everybody to unlink from the whole and scatter into the weeds and perpetrate their darkness, in the shadows or whatever. There is going to be some of that, but the project of humanity going forward to eternity is probably going to be finding, and it's going to be a kind of missionary work, but it's not going to be specific. It's going to be more like sharing the loving kindness and the information about technology and who we are in a loving kind, like what I'm talking about, the true laws of the universe, not weird shit about Jesus. I'm sorry, no offense to Jesus.
No, don't be sorry, I agree.
As a matter of fact, I got a lot of kind things to say about Christ energy and the Jesus idea and the teachings that he had. All beautiful, blessed, and wonderful things. And I wouldn't push back against any of them. But honestly, it's not a celebrity event. It's a spirit energy understanding in the field, people. Anyway, I'm done.
Yep. Nope. Here.
Here. All right, well, we've passed the hour mark, so we can wind this up if you'd like.
Yeah, I think we've covered some pretty amazing ground this time around, and I'll be here next week.
Well, unfortunately, I'm not going to be here.
You're going out of town. Well, I'll be here the next time you have a Saturday available.
The next 2 Saturdays I'm out, and like I've told the fan base, of which there are none, I'm not going to be able to say that forever. That I'm going on a trip to Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Maine. I'm going to go eat some lobster rolls and play some miniature golf and get my eyes looked at and have a good time. When at some point, I'm going to learn how to travel with my studio. I mean, I do have it on a laptop. Theoretically, I could do it if I could see that little tiny thing well enough.
Yeah, totally. No, I hear you.
Probably does me some good to take a break. Anyway, so do I have any last words from my dear guest?
And I other than that, I've had just a grand time, and I too am going to focus on what I want, as opposed to looking around at the things that we have that I don't like. That's a good exercise to do always, but
For all of us.
reminding me to do it is also a good thing.
Hear, hear, amen. You got to kind of glance at the bad stuff, kind of like the way you glance at the road as you fly over it. But don't fixate on it, or next thing you know, your car's stopped and you're staring at the gravel and the oil stains in the road and you're not going anywhere.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
All right. Well, that seems like a pretty good place to stop. And for the regular show, I'll see you back tomorrow morning. And until then, I wish you well. I bid you peace. I love you so much. No matter who you are, that is true. And until next time, may the source be with you.